what's your best memory of the Bowl-O-Rama, Gravel Burns?
My best memory is just the community that it created, from the organisers through to the ever-increasing number of skaters that came. It just encompassed skateboarding at that time.
Well, Grav, get down to Bondi on Saturday, March 22nd for the first ever Bondi Bowl Bash, organised by Bondi Skate Riders in collaboration with Next Door Clothing. Everything about this feels good. That collaboration feels good. The fact that Ty Colling's involved as one of the organisers, who I will add was the first person to ever win a Bowl-O-Rama back in the day. They're bringing back the essence of the early days of Bowl-O-Rama. It's the Bondi Bowl Bash, Saturday, March 22nd. Yes. You good? Yes. This week we're talking mental health first aid with friend and past guest Gravel Burns. It's a bit of a different format for me. It's not an interview. It's more of a conscious conversation with the purpose of being educational and helpful. And Gravel and I felt compelled because we often hear people say, oh, you've got to check in with your friends, you've got to talk to your friends. But how do you actually do that? And what are some strategies that you can literally implement? Like, how do you start the conversation? And we actually role play some scenarios in this episode, and you'll hear it's not easy. It takes practice and repetition, just like anything else. I hope you get something out of it. Drop me a comment, send me some feedback on how you feel like the episode went. Look, it's a bit clunky at first, but as the conversation sort of heats up, I think it starts to get better. So the first hour, a little bit awkward, then it starts to open up into what turns into a deep and meaningful conversation with a close friend. But like I said, the THT interviews will continue, so stay tuned, and I hope you get something out of You Good this week.
Resume. Okay, I'm currently a teacher, a special needs teacher in a behaviour setting. I've been there for this, I think it's my 18th year. I've been teaching on the payroll for 20 years. I am a skateboarder. I'm sometimes an artist. I'm a completely flawed musician. Yes, and I'm a partner, a parent, a friend. I'm a colleague, I'm a son, I'm a sibling. That's kind of covering me.
When you say you work in a behaviour centre dealing with young people who have behavioural issues, what are the common diagnoses? Oh,
look, all the diagnoses. We've got the ADHD, AUD, OCD, all the stuff that you see and hear of kids struggling with in mainstream schools. They can't focus, they're not engaged, they have literacy issues. It's what we see in our setting is mostly it's an environmental problem. So they've come from unsupported or really struggling backgrounds, and they've come to school unprepared. Like if you're lucky, if you've been brought up in a supportive, nurturing place, you go to school and it's sort of a little bit like what you've been doing for the last 5 years. You learn things, you watch things, you have positive role models. These kids haven't had that stuff. And so they just can't function in a mainstream school with that kind of level of intensity and expectation.
Bit of background on me. I think I've really been open about my background. Yes, I have a Bachelor of Education, specialising in health from university. I've been an educator for 20 years in the public system. I have experience working with emotionally disturbed students and students, who have a variety of mental health diagnoses. And I guess over the years, I've accumulated a bit of knowledge. I've done a lot of professional training because it is a passionate area of mine, and I've gravitated towards that kind of training. and I did do a mental health first aid course. I guess Grav and I want to both emphasize that we're not saying we're experts on this. This information is public, it's findable very easily, and we are just going to give you the tools and maybe relate our personal experiences, but we always encourage you to seek your own answers and speak to professionals yourself directly. But we want to just spread the good messages and the way we can help people, because on this podcast over the years, one of the most common themes is people talking about their mental health and, the loss of friends through self-harm, substance abuse. It's just common as. So that's the motivation for doing an episode like this. So a few background things about mental disorders in our country. So the prevalence is that the lifetime prevalence in Australia is approximately 45% of Australian adults suffering from some type of mental health disorder at some point in their lives. So that's 8.6 million people in our country will experience a mental disorder at some point in their lives, and that's referenced from the Australian Bureau of Statistics. They also, on the Australian Bureau of Statistics data, they talk about 12-month prevalence. So that means around 20% of Australians experience a mental health disorder in any given year. So common mental disorders that are prevalent in Australia, because that's where we are, is anxiety disorder, and that affects 14.4% of the population, with a higher prevalence in females. Affective disorder, which includes depression, impacts 6.2% of Australians with an equal gender distribution, and substance use disorders in Australia present at 5.1% of the population, with a higher prevalence in males, which is 7.7%, compared to females 3.3%. And this is all from the Australian Bureau of Statistics. You can go and look it up yourself if you like. I don't want to put too much energy into the stats because I want to just talk about strategies moving forward. We understand there's a problem. I think we all know people that have a problem. So how are we checking in with our mates? But before I start with the 7 key tips on how to approach a mental health check-in conversation, Grav, just freestyle it. You've got a lot of mates. A lot of people love you, myself included. What are some of the signs that you see in some of your friends when you know they're not running well?
Oh, I think straight up, and I do this myself, you go off the radar. You're not around. Like you've got let's talk about skateboarders. We're both skateboarders. We're talking to skateboard people. If you are skating, you're going out on your own, and you're not sort of hanging with the crew as much as you might have. You're not answering calls to go for a skate. I think that's especially adult males, because I'm one, so I've got experience in that. If you're starting to drop off the radar from your friend group or your social groups, there's probably a bit of an indication. Like, it can be just work related, family related. As you get older, you've got less free time. But if you're into a normal routine of hanging with your mates a bit, going for a skate, or doing whatever kind of hobby, exercise, whatever it is that you're doing, and you're not going and doing that at the same sort of frequency or regularity, it's a bit of an indicator something's not right.
So they're not answering their phone, they're not coming to hang out, things like that. They're
not accepting invitations. Okay. That's particularly with social anxiety problems. That's just one of those things that just pops up.
So that's a red flag for you.
Because I know that I do that. If I've done that in the past, I know that I just sort of get inside of myself, and I can't go, and I just don't feel comfortable going and doing those social things. And I've seen it with friends, and I've seen it with colleagues. I've seen it with all people in all walks of my life. They just sort of dive out on you, and you go that, and then sure enough, you ask the question. Yeah. And you get it. If you ask the question, you get an answer of, this has been happening.
Interesting. So the red flags I look for in friends, that is definitely one. They're not responding, they're not answering the phone all of a sudden, or for a long period of time or they've faded out, I generally make it about myself because I'm so self-centered and go, I think that I've done something to offend them when it's not it's not usually that. But I think other signs that I see in friends is obviously excessive substance abuse. I just notice that they're drinking excessively or they're partying regularly, and when they do party, it seems to turn ugly or they become like really obnoxious and you don't want to be around them. The other one I find is that they become increasingly irritable, short temper, and maybe offensive, socially inappropriate. When I start to see those kind of behaviours, I guess the substance thing really sticks out to me the most. But when I do start to see those like sort of socially obnoxious, not even caring behaviours in front of people, then that triggers a red flag for me. I'm like, okay, maybe we need to have a conversation. So let's consider those. So you've just said isolation, substance abuse, disappearing, being obnoxious, rude to people, irritable.
Yeah, and I think, say you're in a, like, well, we're all in some kind of, we relate to people, we're in some kind of relationship, whether it's a friend or a family or your personal domestic relationship, whatever you call that. If there's a real shift in how that person's relating to either their partner or their kids or their colleagues, or I pick up on that really quickly. That's a real red flag for me because, sure, relationships are difficult, but people tend not to go and make massive critical shifts in their relationship status without some other precipitating factor being a problem. You don't, like I in my experiences, I've had long-term relationships that I've ended, and the relationship was definitely something that could have been worked through or maintained, but a heap of other stuff was going on, and you're like, doing that is actually more than I've got at the moment.
Interesting. Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, it's really great that we're having the conversation about it and highlighting these things. So I'm going to go through tip number 1, and this is directly from the Mental Health First Aid course, and the link to the Mental Health First Aid website is in this episode's show notes, so you can scroll down if you want to read basically what I'm reading and also research further, and maybe you want to do the course to further extend your knowledge in this area if you're finding it something that you feel like you'd benefit from. So the first one is, when you want to start a conversation about mental health, choose the right time and place. So be very tactful. If I put it in skateboarding terms, maybe not at the skate park when there's a session going on. If your friend is actually skating and getting some activity, give them that space. It could be their nice outlet that they need. And, find a quiet, private space where they feel safe, I think is a very obvious one. The other thing is, avoid bringing it up when they're in a rush. So maybe set the scene and go, hey, have you got a minute for a chat? Don't try to spring it on them when they're trying to do their shopping or they've got to go and pick their kids up or they're on the way to somewhere they want to be. So, pick the time, maybe plan the time. So again, during a skate session, maybe if I had to put it in skate terms, wait till after the session when crew's going home and you're all physically exhausted and, you've just got this moment one-on-one. So what do you think, Sean? Anything you want to elaborate on?
Yeah, one of the strategies that has really become a big one in co-regulation is that kind of walk and talk strategy or drive and talk strategy. So you're in a kind of next to each other kind of space. So it's not that confrontation of eyeballing, and because I do it. You're sitting, well, you and I have done it. You sat in the car, made a 3-hour trip take 4 seconds,
dude.
Because you're both in the same space. You're engaged in the same thing, but you're not facing each other. You haven't got that eyeball contact, that real strong, walls up kind of thing. You know, it's like when you're in an interview or you're being naughty and the teacher's looking at you, or your spouse or partner's across the dinner table and you've said something dumb. You're in that zone.
Yeah.
And But yeah, co-regulation is if you're sitting in a car or you're walking along a footpath or you're heading somewhere and you just relax and next to each other, you don't have the walls up of feeling like you're being interviewed.
Good one. Yeah. Yeah, I've got to work on that, like not doing a podcast with my friends without microphones. But yeah, so like you're saying, suggest a casual setting, like walking and talking, driving and talking, which reminds me of like I drove 6 hours with Jim Turvey one day to Ulladulla. Yeah, and it felt like it went for like half an hour.
Yeah.
And we talked about everything, and it was like the best therapy session I could ever have asked for. So during a walk, over a coffee. Now, when I had Jack Brown on the show, he's the president of organisation Talk to Me Bro, which is a suicide prevention initiative that has become quite successful because it's just done really well, and he's worked really hard at building it. He mentioned that casual setting, but doesn't suggest doing that over a beer in a pub. Not a good context. That culturally has been the way, I think, for a lot of Australians, but we need to remember that alcohol is a depressant. It's going to suppress the central nervous system and exacerbate feelings of, I guess, low feelings or negative feelings. So he raised that point, and I guess I'll raise it again. Hey, so it's come to my attention that 83% of people that listen to this podcast don't actually follow or subscribe, which kind of means that every time they listen, they have to search it up as opposed to the show being in their show list on their preferred listening platform. So, for example, Apple Podcasts is one of the most popular ways that people listen to this show. You click on the purple icon on your iPhone and go to the show, and you can hit follow. Same on Spotify, and I also now upload all audio episodes to YouTube so you can listen there. So subscribe. It's kind of how it all works in this day and age. I don't often ask people for calls to action, but it does help the show. It helps me expand. It helps me get the messages of my guests as far as possible and kind of give them the respect that they deserve. And I feel a deep sense of responsibility there. So do me a favour, hit the follow or subscribe button and support THT. Thanks.
It's funny that you're bringing that up. I was like thinking about this morning, that where do we go to meet? We go to cafes.
Yeah.
We drink coffee.
Oat milk latte.
Well, yeah. What if that's your thing?
I think.
And that's a drug. You're getting on a different. You might say things that you wouldn't normally say because your mind's racing, whatever. Your heart rate's up. You might feel and if you're a anxious / agitated kind of person, and that's your problem, or that's a thing that you're dealing with, you're going to feel differently if you're drinking coffee, and conversely, like you say. But where do Australians, particularly Australian men, go? We go to the pub. That's where we socialise. We go to the bolo after we've had a skate. They're the places we go. Where else do we go?
Yeah. Well, it's good we're talking about it. I mean, is doing that better than not doing it?
I think so.
Maybe that's something to think about. Like, I guess we're brainstorming here. And I really like what you said about caffeine. Yes, it can, for me personally too, if I'm having a period of anxiety, caffeine does not help. Yeah, makes me aggressive.
Yep.
Road rage.
Yep.
Sort of. But anyway. Yeah, good point.
I just think culturally it's a tricky, like I put it down to, if you're, what do we do when we play sport? We play sport, we're with a team or we're with a group or whatever, then we finish our sport and we go to the pub. Yeah. That's just it's just such an Australian thing to do.
The culture is changing though.
I agree.
With
absolutely.
The young generation, it's like this whole movement of like against alcohol. Because look, coffee, let's face it, it's fairly benign. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm sorry. The data and the history of alcohol use shows that it's far from benign. I don't want to preach just because I don't drink, and I know a lot of. I mean, I'm always around people that are drinking and partying, and I was at the Belco Bowl Jam, huge party settings.
Yep.
But I think just put a lid on it, right? At some stage, if you can. But anyway.
Yeah, I do drink, and I still agree with you. I know I haven't got a problem with drinking. You know, I don't drink.
A lot of people
too
don't.
much. Yeah, but I drink. By saying I don't drink too much, I know that I drink too much.
Yeah.
It's regularly drinking.
I'm glad we're having this debate because the jury's out on that one, you know. If that's a setting that the person will only go to, well, that's probably better than not.
Better than nothing.
Is that what the conclusion we've come to?
I think so.
Solving the world's problems here. Yes. So tip number 2 is express concern without judgment. Now, that's a good one for life in general, is to not judge or try not to judge. Use I statements to show you care. So, for example, it could be something like, I've noticed you seem down lately and I just want to check in. Sounds pretty formal. Maybe you can twist it, make it sound more casual than that. But that is the basic premise of I've noticed, or I care about you and want to know how you're feeling. Again, it could be contextual. Maybe that's something you'd say to an intimate partner or a close friend, maybe not some random you've just met, but you know, I care about you. And then the last point I want to make is avoid sounding accusatory or making assumptions. So example would be, you always seem sad, or what's wrong with you? So avoid that. Use I statements. So yeah. Maybe give me a better one than those.
Well, it's...
You like those?
I do. I mean, I like when I read through that, and I've read it before, and when I read through it again today, as you say, it sounds very formal and a little bit, you wouldn't use... the person you're talking to, you know well enough to know that they need to be asked the question. You're not just, as you say, you're not just going to... A guy you just met that serves you coffee in a cafe.
I care about you.
Yeah, I've noticed that
Where's my coffee?
Yeah, I noticed that, you normally stop and talk to me when I noticed you didn't do that today. You okay? You're not going to do that.
You
the person that, that guy burned your milk. The person that you're having this conversation with, you know well enough to be having this conversation, so you also know well enough how to phrase that question. But it is, yeah. And look, the non-judgmental thing, at work we call it, or just in life I've learned that it's about unconditional positive regard.
Unconditional
positive regard. You have to think about that person, and it's hard to put it in any more clearly than that is a human being with a brain in their head, just like you.
Yeah.
And they've had life experiences, they've had things go well and things go badly. They're doing the very best they can get, and that's all we're doing. All any of us are doing is the best we can at that moment with the strategies we've got. You can't judge them on that.
No.
It's not your place. You can't look at them and say, man, you've had 5 beers today. That's clearly a problem. You can phrase it another way. You can think about that person from a more positive, non-judgmental way, and we call that unconditional positive regard. You've just got to be thinking about that person as a human being with feelings, and try and get to where you want to go with nothing but empathy and caring, not judgmental thoughts.
Yeah. That approach of like the example you used of you've got a drinking problem, it really ties back into the self-centered nature of humans by default. I mean, I will admit it, by default, I am self-centered, self-serving. What's in this for me? I want to be right all the time. So when you say to someone, you've got a drinking problem, really they're perceiving that as he wants to be right and I'm wrong, okay? He's better than me. He's superior to me, and that's only going to just put up a barricade and repel them into isolation, in my opinion. So, can we do a role play? How would you use an I statement on me now to express your concern of me without judgment? On the spot, freestyle it, go grab.
Oh, you don't have any problems, Shannon.
That's the most correct thing you've ever said.
Okay, I noticed that you've been a little bit concerned about a couple of things that are going on in your life. And from the outside, I notice that's it's making your engagement in your workplace more difficult for you. Is there anything about that you could clarify that maybe we could talk about?
Sorry to laugh, but that's pretty formal, dude.
Yeah, well, we're having a very serious podcast. Oh, do you want me to just say, hey, look,
Yeah,
okay,
as a mate,
if we were just doing, like we just had this conversation seriously.
No,
if I said to you, hey, like that stuff you just told me is pretty intense. Are you sure you're okay with what's going on? Is there anything I can help you with?
Okay, yeah, it's cool. But I must admit, that just clarifies, like,
it's a hard thing to do.
This is challenging, like, and it takes practice.
Yeah.
And how many people are actually practicing it or even mentally rehearsing it.
Yeah.
It's important.
Yeah.
So, and this is...
No, I just went into this really formal setting because we're sitting here with headphones and microphones, and I went into...
Give me like, but then you did the casual version. So, like, if I was to do it, you'd be like, yo, Sean, dog, grabby boy, what's up? I've noticed you're not your gravel self, man. You good?
Yeah, and that's the exact opposite of the kind of thing that I'd respond to. No, but it's, you know, I reckon there's people in your life that would be really appropriate to say that stuff to. And it's like I said before, you're going to know this person that you're talking to. You're going to know who this person is and what they're going to respond to. And
generally, and that's what this is about. Checking in with mates.
Yeah.
But I don't think we should miss opportunities to help strangers. You know,
yeah.
I'm sorry
if it's at all possible.
but I have I'm having these conversations in public more and more at skate parks. But I guess I'll share this. Like, I was in Audi, and a lady came up to me and said, "Are you the guy from the podcast?"
Yeah,
which is doesn't happen often. But she's like, I listened to this particular episode and it really linked to a situation I had, and we had this awesome conversation, and then became immediately obvious that this person was extremely lonely, extremely sad, and knowing what I know now, potentially could have led to who knows what. So I just felt compelled to give her the time to listen. And I feel like if these opportunities do, present themselves, are you going to give people that time? There's a lot of very lonely people out there.
Yeah.
More than ever.
Yeah, I definitely do. You're a heartbeat away from being a weirdo in the street if you really just push it on people, if you engage with people that aren't really soliciting. But if you get in a situation where somebody approaches you like that and you end up in a conversation, I will definitely get very, very personal and very personable with people really quickly, because I think
it's in your nature, though.
Well, it is in my nature, but it's also I love hearing people's stories, and almost every time you have these conversations, whether it's a colleague at work. I've just got a bunch of new colleagues that I'm working, like I'm talking 6 new people that I've met this year at work, and I get in really close really quickly, sometimes, too much for some people, but mostly it's just, and then people are responding very quickly with opening up and being vulnerable. And I think you do that and you're already helping. You're not just helping them, you're helping you. You're making new relationships. You become someone they can trust and someone they can talk to.
But haven't you noticed that of years of skating? I know, like, especially when I was younger, street skating a lot, you're in the urban environment and you would, meet bums in the street all the time because they're the skate spot you want to skate at. And sometimes they're aggressive and dangerous, and sometimes they're lonely and sad, and they can be funny as well. And you have a joke with them, and next thing you know, like, they want to have a conversation about their life, and you feel this deep sense of sadness and empathy for them. So I believe that there's so much power in it in terms of building your own self-confidence. It's like a hack. Helping others helps yourself
100%.
because it gets you out of yourself and you're not thinking about yourself for a minute. And again, I just believe that so many people are just walking around only considering themselves, and they're not putting the needs of others in their realm at all, except for maybe their family, loved ones, kids. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think, look, to be fair to a lot of people, they're just in survival mode. There's a lot of people out there in the world that just don't have the background, the skills, the support, the knowledge, the information to get out of that constant grind of just surviving. And you have anything you can impart on people in that situation, without being pretentious or preachy, I think will help.
Awesome. Preachy. Yeah, and again, through practice and repetition, you'll get better at it, just like anything. So tip number 1, choose the right time and place. Tip number 2, express concern without judgment. Use I statements. Don't be a superior wanker. Number 3, listen more than you speak. Now, this is a big one for me, especially interviewing people on the podcast. Like, I've learnt this. I practice this regularly. This episode's different. It's not an interview. It's a conversation with a good friend. So listen more than you speak. So that old saying, like, speak once, listen twice. I love that. Be present. Put your phone away, make eye contact, and nod to show you're listening. So that's the biggest thing I've noticed with interviewing people when I'm listening to them is I make eye contact, I'm nodding my head, I'm using my arms. And because I'm an audio podcast, you're not seeing any of this. But sometimes, like, I'm using my body language to prompt the guest to speak more. So I'm like, and they know they're getting all the signals without any audio from me. So you can do it too. Remember, there's a variety of ways we communicate. There's verbal, there's non-verbal, hands, like hand movements, eye contact, facial expressions. Give them space to share without interrupting. So ask them a question. I've noticed that you haven't been great lately. Is everything okay? And then actually wait and listen. And then when they've finished, find your moments to chime in, share, add, identify with them, and then validate their feelings. So some examples of that could be, man, that sounds really tough. Like, hey, I'm here for you if you need me, maybe make some suggestions like, do you need a lift somewhere, or can I go and buy your groceries for you because, you're obviously not in a good space. That'll just give you a bit of time to, recuperate from what you're going through. And another one could be like, I can see how that would be overwhelming for you. There's some other I statements. Sean, Grav, any more I statements?
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that you're talking about there in terms of giving space and active listening it's a really big part of what we do at school. It's called, we learned it, we've been trained and we learned it as reality therapy, and it's active listening and then trying to, what we refer to as spiral down to what the actual need is that person's trying to meet. So you can't do that if you're not actively listening. If someone's talking to you and they're explaining, they're not going to come straight out. They don't. You don't. I wouldn't. To anyone, regardless of how well you know them, with the actual problem. Oh, like, say the problem is your dad just died. Well, a lot of people are going to come up with 50 different behaviours around that in the workplace, at the shops. If you're a friend of that person at the skate park, if you didn't know that, you're going to see a lot of different behaviours, and you might be concerned and you might go, wow, your dad dying is a bad one, because people would tell you that. But say, are you okay? Like, you seem a little bit off today, or you just seem like you haven't been yourself the last few days, or and they go, oh yeah, I'm just not feeling great. I haven't really been eating this week, and you go, oh, that's a lot. I can't go 24 hours without eating. I get really hangry, and is there like you're not feeling well? Oh yeah, I just haven't been feeling myself. I'm just a bit down and just haven't got any appetite. Oh yeah, like how long have you not had your appetite for? Oh, the last week or so. Oh, has anything gone on in the last week or so that maybe you would have?
So you're saying like ask subsequent questions, so they'll give you a response and then follow that rabbit hole.
Follow that pathway.
Follow it and go, okay, and then
spiral down is what we do.
Build. Yeah.
And eventually, now I'm not saying it happens every time, but if you're an active listener and you're in a situation where you want to help that person and you really do have that kind of relationship, you will find the source of what they're, and that's a therapeutic strategy. You're not really doing that with your mates. That's not your job. But active listening is what we're talking about, and getting into those. If you're in a position where you're having a conversation, follow their statements through with supportive statements and questions about that, because that shows that you're really engaged and listening.
For sure. Yeah. And you're helping yourself because you're not thinking about yourself for a minute and you're helping someone else.
Yeah.
So that's tip number 3. So I'll go again. 1, choose the right time and place, express concern without judgment, listen more than you speak. Number 4 is to ask open-ended questions. Encourage them to talk more. So this really goes in line with what you're saying. So, you can start with like, hey, what's been on your mind lately? Or even as simple as, hey, what's good? You good? What's happening in your life at the moment? Or how can I best support you right now? What do you need? Do you need anything? What can I do for you? So it really, again, with the questioning thing that you just mentioned, I love that, because once you get them to open up on a fairly open-ended question, it's like it becomes more refined, more detailed, and then you kind of can get to you can help them to discover the source of their problem, because they don't even know sometimes. They just know they're feeling like shit. They're not thinking straight. And they go, oh, yeah, you just helped me work that out. Thank you. So ask open-ended questions. And remember, like it says here on the mental health website, mental health check-in, mental health first aid website, that if someone's hesitant, like don't put pressure on them, like to share everything at once. Like if it's basic, and that's okay. So don't pressure them and interrogate them, but ask open-ended questions. And if they're like, uneasy about it, just let it go. So number 5, avoid trying to fix their feelings. Now, I've had girlfriends in the past say, you're just trying to fix everything and not actually listen. So avoid trying to fix their feelings. So instead of offering solutions, just acknowledge their struggle. And it could be statements like, that sounds really hard. You're not alone. I've had the same experience actually. Or I may not fully understand, but I want to support you. So just let me know what you need. Avoid dismissive phrases such as, just think positive, or the big one, get over it, whatever. It's all good. It's not a big problem. You'll be right. She'll be right, mate. That's a common one.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of those things that you said, like, it's really, really, yourself. I know it. I've found myself doing it sometimes, where you go, oh yeah, I know what you mean. I've had this thing happen to me, and then all of a sudden you're talking about yourself again. I try and avoid at all costs even going there with, even though you're empathizing, saying you have an experience like that. They don't want to hear that.
No.
They don't want to hear that. Yeah, whatever, mate. Yeah. You'll get people disengaged from a conversation straight away, because it's really, really difficult to say, oh, yeah, I know what you mean. The same thing happened to me last year, and it's really difficult to do it with any kind of empathy. You've obviously got over it yourself. Fine. That's good. You might have experience in that, but I'm not in that space right now. I feel like rubbish. You're telling me that you did it and it's great. Yeah, piece of cake. Don't do that. It's a real tricky one to not fall into that one, because you are showing empathy, you are showing understanding, you've got experience in that, but it just comes off as,
it does.
Yeah,
it's
you're
hard.
not. It is. It's really difficult. Yeah, I mean, if you know someone really well,
because you care.
Yeah, you do. And if you know someone really well, I've been in a situation where I've had friends go through a thing that I've been through, and they come to you and say, hey, you've been through this. how long does it take, or what is there anything I can do so to make this different? That's different. If they ask you for advice and something you've experienced, sure, tell them the whole nuts and bolts. I was going to say nuts and dice. No, but give them the whole nuts and bolts. But don't just say, I went through that. It's crap. Because they don't want to know that. That's not helping them.
Yes, that's so true. Number 6, encourage professional help if needed. So if the person seems overwhelmed, ask them if they've considered talking to a therapist or a counsellor, and maybe offer to help find support for them if they're willing. And that could be things like saying to them, would you like me to help find you some support? I can look it up. I can search it up, find someone in your local area. Or if you really need, I can go with you, if you like, to your first session as a support person. No worries. Got a substance problem? Maybe AA would work for you. I'll come with you to the meeting and I can sit in the group meeting if that would help. And highly effective. Yeah. All right. Number 7, last one. Follow up and stay connected. So check in again later. So maybe give them a text message or a call along the lines of, I was thinking about our conversation, like, how are you feeling today? Or did you sleep last night after our conversation? What sort of night did you have? Do you feel rested? And keep inviting them to activities. Like Gravel was saying at the start, he notices that friends just fall off, they don't come out. I guess because we're both skateboarders, it's like keep inviting them for a skate. Hey, like, you're going to skate this Wednesday night? Yeah, I'm down. Let's do it, Or just keep them in the loop, even if they don't respond. I guess don't stalk them or harass them. And it's important that if you really care about this person, like, let them know that you're there for the long haul, like not just once, because mental health is dynamic. It's constantly changing and it always passes. When you're in the dark, stormy times, they do pass, and it's good to be there for people during that. But it's also good to show your friends that you're there with them through the good times and the bad times. I think they wrote a song about that.
Someone did, yeah.
Numerous songs,
yes.
So do you want to sing it for us, Grav, or you good?
No, I'm good.
You sure? Yeah. I don't want to pressure you. You sound hesitant.
Yeah, I'm definitely not singing into this microphone. The first song that came to mind is Shivers by Boys Next Door. I sang that yesterday. I actually sing it pretty well.
Shivers by the Boys Next Door.
Boys Next Door was Nick Cave's first band. It was written by Roland Howard, and it's
How's it go?
Oh, you'd know it.
I don't know.
Screaming Jets did a cover up, but the first line is, "I've been contemplating suicide."
Oh, that's Screaming Jets.
No, it's not.
Is that a cover?
Yeah, theirs is a cover. Yeah,
Screaming Jets.
Yeah, you can. We're going to get on a punch up in a minute. Nah. Yeah, we are. You're going out that window, pal. No, it was like a 1979 song by Roland S. Howard that Nick Cave's first. Yeah, I'm glad. I hope other people out there in the world are finding out that this is not a Screaming Jet song. It's a really, it's a great song. Look it up, Boys Next Door. Don't ever listen to the Screaming Jets play it again because it's not their song.
That sounds unpatriotic, Sean.
Yep. Love those guys.
They're a staple.
Love those guys. Yeah. One of the Melbourne. One of the.
But you do love the Screaming Jets.
No, I don't. It's not. They're not my bag. But
not my bag.
Jimmy the Human, who's one of the skateboarders from the old school Melbourne crew, he's one of the guitarists in that band now, and he's a great guy. And he likes playing with them. So
do they still play?
Yeah, they still play.
Man, how old are they?
What are you talking about?
80.
We never supported them, but we played at the. South Leagues Club in the back room when they were playing in the front room once. So that's kind of like my claim to fame. I played with the Screaming Jets. Well, they were in different rooms.
Same venue.
Same venue. But no, I'm not. It's not really my bag. But good on them.
You sure don't want to sing a few?
I definitely
lines?
don't.
Far out, man. I don't know.
This whole conversation's gone sideways really quickly.
I feel like I want to bully you into it, but
you can try.
It just kind of contradicts everything we're trying to do here.
I haven't got my guitar. I'm not doing it without my guitar,
dude. I'd love to see you just rocking out, Sean. Grav.
That'd be great. I'd love you to do that too, but yeah, I don't tell anyone where and when I'm playing.
You know what's on my bucket list to actually sing one song with a band in front of some sort of audience.
Oh, we'll have to
That's
organise
not karaoke.
We'll have to organise that.
But I don't. I just to like. I guess I just got to do it just to see what it's like. Because to me, it's the most terrifying thing in the world. So it's like I want to just face that fear.
I reckon you can probably sing. I reckon you can. Yeah, I reckon you can. Do you sing in the shower? You like turn the music up?
I sing to my kids.
And in the car, do you sing in the car really loud? Yeah, see, and you've got a good your talking voice is great.
Oh, thanks, man.
No, it is, you know. Well, and so I can picture that you sing pretty well. We can definitely arrange you singing in front of a band.
You know, it's funny, man. Like, my kids loved that movie with, Bradley Cooper and I'm having a mental blank. He was the alcoholic singer, Star is Born.
Oh, did they remake that movie?
Yeah, they remade it with,
right.
Who's the pop princess that's in it?
Oh, Lady Gaga? No.
Lady Gaga, and she's epic. She's awesome. Yeah. And anyway, I watched it. I went into that movie going, oh, what am I watching this shit for? But then I started watching it. And I was like, this is actually pretty epic. And it's like deep. Like, the guy's a full alcoholic and she's trying to help him and it's real. But there's a song in it called Maybe It's Time. And my kids love it. And it's like I sing it to them before bed.
Yeah, cool.
You want to hear it?
I do.
Nah.
See?
But it goes like, maybe it's time to let the old ways die. Have you heard that one?
I know.
Maybe it's time to let the old ways die. It's a beautiful song.
So you can
and
sing.
It's Brad Cooper.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, I do like that movie.
Yeah.
I remember the original one as well.
What's that famous Screaming Jets song, though? The big one. The big, like, the one that... Say never again, because I don't care. It's just not fair that
you know that I know better.
So don't say that to someone. Don't say to someone, you know that I know better.
Well, yeah, we use that song in a conference about choice theory, which is where reality therapy comes from, and we changed they. I'm not saying we because I had nothing to do with it, but they changed the words, and it was like the complete opposite of "you know that I know better." And I'm like, well, what do you use that song for?
Yeah. What's reality therapy?
It's the thing it's that thing that we learned a long time ago when I first started. It's part of choice theory where you're helping you're trying. It's that spiraling down thing. You're talking to people with the unconditional positive regard, but you're trying to find the root of their problem, like the need. We think about it in terms of every single thing we do as a behaviour, and we're doing, some of them are maladaptive, but they're still there. You're doing this behaviour because that's the best thing you got at that exact moment in time. Sometimes it's just not the right thing to do. And that's what we see mostly with our kids at school, because they haven't been taught the strategies. And that's what you're doing here. You're actually teaching people strategies to help their friends or help themselves.
Yeah, and that's what I want to do. I don't know how well this is going. Like, I feel like quite vulnerable, like even approaching something like that, like this. But I do feel a deep desire to be putting things out in the world that are significant and helpful. And I have made myself vulnerable because I've never approached a podcast of this sort. So thanks for sort of nursing me through it as well. It's really been great having you as a support with it. So I don't know. I think it's going okay, but I guess I want to give people practical ways, because I'm so sick of hearing people say, just talk to your mates. But just talking to your mates is not that easy. Even you can hear us now struggling sometimes to come up with examples and ways to start it.
Yeah.
So
that's authentic.
That's authentic without sounding like a weirdo or a kook. Yeah? Yeah. But anyway, I'm going to keep pushing on. So I'm going to recap the 7 tips for how to approach a conversation about mental health with a friend. 1, choose the right time and place. 2, express concern without judgment. 3, listen more than you speak. Use body language, nod, eye contact. That's a big one. Number 4, ask open-ended questions. And if they're hesitant, don't push it. Just chill. Number 5, avoid trying to fix their feelings and avoid dismissive phrases like, just get over it. She'll be right, mate. Okay? Avoid trying to fix. Number 6, encourage professional help if needed. Number 7, follow up and stay connected. Let them know you're in there for the long haul.
Yeah.
Be good.
The thing about eye contact's a tricky one because it absolutely shows that you're engaged. Sometimes it's not appropriate. Sometimes it's not culturally appropriate because it's a disrespectful thing in certain cultures. You know, if someone's trying to make eye contact with you and you don't want to make eye contact because culturally that's a sign of disrespect, you have to be aware of that stuff, and sometimes it's just not appropriate. And like I said before, that kind of side by side thing just puts people at ease in a conversational kind of way.
Yeah.
Sometimes eye contact is the most appropriate thing because you're showing that you're engaged and you're really looking into a person's eyes and understanding what they're saying and how they're saying it and how they're feeling. But it's like everything else we're saying. It's contextual, whether it's the right thing or not the right thing. You should know that pretty quickly. People will be avoiding your eye contact like crazy. If that's not working, try something else.
Yeah. You know, in my time on this planet, I feel like people just want to feel like they're seen. And eye contact does that. Directly. Because at the end of the day, we're all living this experience ultimately alone. And when you really like think about it like existentially.
Yep.
We are like, we have partners and friends and family, but really we're on the journey alone. We're born alone and we'll probably die alone.
Yeah.
Maybe people around us, but you know, so showing people that you genuinely see them by looking at them and nodding and listening and being there with them is so powerful. And I want to add a big thing I've noticed since starting the podcast is that the notion of loneliness. So podcasts were profound for me before I started one because they were removing loneliness because I had someone's voice in my ears talking to me and had this feeling of like I was there. It was voyeuristic. I'm listening in on the conversation. Sometimes I'm part of the conversation because I'm like adding my 2 cents just like to know I'm like a mad person. And then as I've started it now, like this is like I think the 7th year of doing it, you know, over the years now, I can honestly say like so many people have reached out and said, I'm alone all day in my job or where I am. And, you know, having the podcast to listen to all day really makes my day better, you know.
Yep.
So in this digital age, it's got its benefits, but I think it's also isolating people a lot. And they're not making human connections.
The digital
age. They're making digital. Sorry, they're making. I went off on a bit of a weird tangent, but they're making digital connections, but they're not making tangible, real life connections. Yeah, that's an observation.
And it's statistically backed up, and I haven't got the laptop in front of me, but it's true. It's people are isolating, and like never before because. When they can isolate and feel connected, and it's not real. It's not a real connection. It's not. I mean, it might be in the future because we evolve, but our brains are so slow. Like we can't even come to grips with being in the workplace and going to school, and that stuff's been going on for 200 or 300 years. The industrial age.
Yeah.
We haven't got to grips with that yet. We're sure not got to grips with being able to stay connected with every single person you know every single minute of the day from your bedroom.
Yeah.
We just aren't evolutionarily programmed for that. So, yeah, sure, that's available to you. And if you're in the work, if you're in your car, you know, I love listening to you guys. I listened to you and Danny going to and from work the other day, and it's great because I know you both. Well, Danny Van. I loved that show. I love that guy.
Did you?
I love that guy. I've known Danny since I was 14 years old. He's a great guy. But I went to work to and from, and I was in the car feeling like I'm sitting there chatting with my mates. And that's okay because other people aren't available. But I'm not the kind of person that sits in my bedroom. Having said that, I have done that many times listening to your podcast and other podcasts. But I know that that's not real connection. And some people don't. Some people are losing grip on that. They have, I've got like hundreds of friends that I play games with. No, you're not. They're not your friends. They're not your friends. You don't know those people. And it's funny, this is really interesting, and I'm just going to throw this in there because I think it is related to, I know it is related. It's like that's definitely a scientific fact, touching and hugging and, obviously intimate people you hug.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to be said for handshaking, arm around the shoulder. The closer you know someone, or the more intimate you are with those people, the closer you become physically. But we're designed to do that. We need that. You watch any kind of species of primates in any kind of environment, and they are tactile. And where it's becoming less, I don't know whether it's just over. What is that? Like people being, that there's just horrible things that have happened that have always happened in our species, but are just in the news now. So everyone's real concerned about who you can touch and who you can't touch. You watch sports, and there's a lot of hand slapping, high fives, pats on the back, and that's because that you get a better result from groups if there's physical touch.
Well, I Googled it as you were saying it.
Yeah, that's what you're doing there. I thought you were just off on a tangent and just looking up a skateboard video or something.
No. So this is referenced by a book by someone with the surname Field, first name T, in 2010. And the book was called Touch for Socio-Emotional and Physical Wellbeing, a review, developmental review. And they cite in this book that physical touch has these benefits. It boosts immunity. So touch stimulates the production of white blood cells, improves immune function. So you're right. Like, it's just to back up what you're saying.
Thanks.
I'm trying to be
good on you.
A bit more professional now.
Very
as opposed
good.
to throwing shit out there.
Is it peer reviewed?
Well, maybe. I mean, it's a published book. So obviously, if it's published, they've put some more work into it. And I'll put the reference in this episode's show notes if you want to look it up further. It reduces pain. It's known to release endorphins, the body's natural painkillers. It lowers blood pressure and heart rate, enhances growth and development, essential for infants' neurological and physical development.
Yep.
Mental health and emotional benefits were cited in that book as reducing stress and anxiety, so it lowers cortisol. This is all just through human touch and bond and various types of bonding. Increases oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone. Improves mood, strengthens emotional bonds. Yeah, I could go on because there's a lot.
I can go on, and I've been experimenting with it recently in
human touch.
Yeah, lots of different like, what do you call it, spheres of my relationships, not just significant relationships like family and partner, but like with colleagues that are willing to hug. I hugged my friend in a cafe yesterday who works in that cafe, and he said something about embracing, and I said, I'll embrace you, and he gave me a hug. And that's like, you make a connection, like, and it just dissolves so much of whatever it is that could, potentially, I didn't have anything, I wasn't feeling bad, but you hug your children, you do that for a really specific reason. Not just because you love them and it feels nice, but you're doing it for that co-regulation of
They literally need it.
They literally need it. You need to, like, they need to be hugged something like 15 times a day.
Yeah, by both parents.
Yes.
Sorry, did I finish your sentence?
No. I just
ideally.
Ideally, that would be great. Yeah.
I could look up the statistics around that in terms of delayed onset of psychological problems in that person. So if they weren't hugged by both parents, the required amount. Yep. It ties into a big conversation, that one.
And that's why I said I could go on about it, because I can. I really strongly believe that it's become almost a taboo thing, like to.
Why? Because of fear of litigation?
But just fear of being seen as, like,
especially as a male.
Yeah, 100%. And so I've been actively feeling, it's a bad way of putting it, feeling my way around those taboos recently, and talking to people about it and asking how often they hug their partners, or how have they been hugged, when was the last time you were hugged, and who do you go to be hugged if you're not in a relationship, or your children are older and don't aren't sort of close by. And it's really crazy how many people don't have a regular hug.
It is. And again, because going all the way back to the start of the conversation around these digital connections that they perceive as they've made.
Mm.
And it's hard. I probably have done it myself, looking at how many followers I have. Like I've got that many followers, like,
Yeah.
but lonelier than ever. And then I think the fallout is like it's almost like a big scam, really, because the fallout is they do wake up one day and go, I am lonely and sad.
Yeah, yeah.
And the only thing that actually will subdue that or numb it for a minute is more of that.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
and
like
the expectation of that is where the dopamine comes in. The idea of what you're getting out of your phone is not a reward. It's the expectation of what you're going to get out of you. And that's why the flicking thing works so effectively.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was designed by neuroscientists.
It was.
So you're flicking, and it's like you think about what you're doing. Don't. Anyway, I won't get into people not being present in what that's all about. But it's a scam, man. You're getting robbed.
Well, you know they mimicked the poker machine.
Yeah. Well, like it's sort of obvious
where it's got no end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so funny when it's literally when you watch yourself. I've been watching myself because Belko was on a couple of weeks ago. I don't engage in social media hardly at all, but I really loved the hype coming into Belko, and then Eric and Pangy's photos and a few other people putting photos up from Belko, and it's just so great to see it through the lens, because you're there, you were there, you're on the platform, you see it.
Yeah.
But you see someone with a really crisp photo of something crazy and sick, and it's like revisiting it all again. Anyway, point being, I spent a lot of time in the last couple of weeks flipping through Instagram looking for those photos, and you hit a like on something, and then next thing you know, like 3 screens down, that comes up again. Well, that's not there. It's not real. It's not real. The algorithm's just gone, that guy's just clicked on that person. I'll just keep feeding him that. And you're getting the reward of that. But it's not real. It's not like that. If you'd have picked your phone up and clicked on something else and scrolled through, it would be giving you something else. You have to realize that what they're giving you is what they want to give you, not what you want to see.
Yeah.
Even though you're liking it. But anyway, it's like the poker machine. It's exactly what it is.
Well, endless scrolling, also known as infinite scroll, was created and invented by a computer designer called Aza Raskin in 2006 while working on a social media platform development. And even though psychologists didn't invent it, social media platforms use the psychology to keep users engaged. Okay, because the science shows, based on P.F. Skinner's behavior psychology, that the scrolling activates the brain's dopamine system, which you just said, which is linked to pleasure and rewards. And then also it creates loss, aversion, and fear of missing out, so FOMO. So the idea that something better might appear if you keep scrolling makes people reluctant to stop.
Yes.
So they've used psychology. So it wasn't created by psychologists, but they tapped into psychology research.
And you feel like what you're doing is a reward.
Yeah.
But it's not. The dopamine's activated pre you doing it. It's the expectation of you doing it. It's why when you buy something online, and I wish not everyone had done it, but I feel like everyone's got an experience, and even I have, which is so disappointing in myself. You see something, you look at that, whatever reason you decide, let's buy that, and then you go, that is when the dopamine kicks in, and it comes, and you're like, oh, what was I thinking when I did that? That's cheap, or it's nasty, or it's ugly, or it's not. Well, I don't need one of those, or whatever.
No.
But you've already had the dopamine hit. The dopamine hit doesn't come when the package arrives in the mail.
Well, it's interesting that Aza Raskin is his name. later regretted inventing the infinite scroll, saying, and I quote, "If you don't give your brain time to catch up with your impulses, you just keep scrolling." He now advocates for ethical technology design to reduce compulsive behaviours online. So I remember when Facebook first came out, your feed would stop when all your friends, say you'd looked at all their posts and there was no more posts to look at, it would stop. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes.
And it was around 2005, 2006. These are early days. So like, let's say I had 10 friends. I've seen what my 10 friends have put up. Oh, it's finished.
Yep.
Until someone else posts again.
Yep.
So sometimes you would I remember would just try and wait till someone posted but you wouldn't see anything. But now it's got no bottom. But I remember then Facebook clued into that and then created the bottomless scroll around 2006, 2007.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't done Facebook for a really long time, but they're all the same. They all do the same thing.
Yeah. Again, I think responsible use, but I just feel that humans are so impulsive. We really have trouble regulating, especially if something feels good.
Yep.
You can't run on self-will.
Yeah.
Your self-will, we can do a lot with self-will, but when it comes to these deep, I guess, primal instincts of whether it's hunger, sex, potential sex, status, they're very powerful things. They're very powerful desires.
Yep. And that's what I'm talking about. There's no way we're going to evolve out of this anytime soon because we're still doing that stuff. We've been doing that stuff for hundreds of thousands of years. Those impulses are so entrenched, but our capacity...
It's normalised.
Yeah, and our capacity for dealing with this modern stuff, it's, 20 years old?
Yeah, 2006.
Was that thing, the infinite scroll. So that's going on 20 years old. There's no way we're going to evolve the capacity to...
But you know how you said that that a social media friend or a digital friend or a digital connection is not real because you weren't born into that. You were born in another generation when...
Where friends were friends.
Friends were friends, come home when the streetlights come on, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But, we are looking at a generation that are literally born into it and not just born into it. There's parents that are using it as parenting to give them respite from parenting. And these kids are just building such a dependence on it. And you see it. We both see it day in, day out.
And I've had this conversation with a couple of people at work today just to get other people's point of view on, but it's a job, okay? If you don't want to do that job, don't have children. But people just do. And you're not going to take any other job. People take their dogs for a walk. They feed their dogs. They talk to their dogs. They pat their dogs. All of those things because that's kind of the role of a dog owner. And this is it's a terrible thing to say, but they would never just neglect their dog or their pet, whatever their pet is.
Hashtag fur baby.
But whatever. But they're unwittingly doing that with their children, and they don't think that that's what they're doing. It is heavy because as you say, we see the results of these kids. And look, I always say, we evolve. I say to people all the time, you can't just go down the street and buy horseshoes anymore. Why is that? We don't ride horses. We've evolved. Yeah. And we will evolve to figure out this world. And I don't want to sound like a dinosaur because I hate I really believe in things changing and evolving and life becoming better. How good is it when you run out of money at the bank and at the shops, you don't have to just leave your shopping there and you can just get your phone and chuck more money in your account.
Just do a bank transfer.
Just like that. How good is that? It's a good world. That's a good world to live in. If you got money to transfer, yeah, obviously.
There's people out there who don't.
No, but they already know that.
Yeah.
So they're probably not going to try and transfer money that
They're
day.
not.
But
I tell you who's not though. He's Aza Raskin. He's not having problems transferring money. He would have made a bundle of money of that idea.
But he's like, it's like the Robert Oppenheimer of digital technology, isn't it? You're going, oh, that was a bad idea. I wish I didn't come up with that.
It's a heavy comparison.
Yeah, well, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, is it as dangerous?
I don't know. No, I'm not.
Okay,
Anyway.
don't go there. But I'm going to put a link to the Skinner's behavioural psychology book that I just referenced in regards to the psychology that was used to create the infinite scroll, if you feel like looking that up. Anyway, listen. We are starting to get towards the pointy end of the show, and I'm not going to shy away from the next thing I want to talk about because I think it's very crucial. Grav and I have both lost friends to suicide, and I've also lost a family member to suicide, which is still to this day hard to talk about, and anyone that has experienced it knows that the feeling that immediately comes over you is that you wish you'd spoke to them, or you wish you'd seen the signs, or you wish you did something. And it's a very hopeless feeling. And we're going to just look at strategies like, how do we talk to someone who might be suicidal? And this is directly from the mental health first aid strategy. And when I spoke to, again, Jack Brown, who is a suicide prevention initiative founder of Talk to Me Bro, his philosophy was that we need to be talking. Like, a lot of people try to avoid it or dance around it. Like, no, like, you need to be direct with this. So if you think you have a friend who might be suicidal, these are things that you can do. So first one is ask directly, are you thinking about hurting yourself? You can ask them that. Take them seriously. Don't assume that they're just being dramatic. Help them find immediate support. So call a crisis line or emergency services if needed. And I will put those numbers like Lifeline in this episode's show notes if you're in Australia. And I'll also look up the international number. I know there is one for a similar thing to Lifeline in various parts of the world. And some of the examples that they sort of reference in the mental health first aid kit is things you can say to someone is such as, I'm really worried about you. Have you been having thoughts of hurting yourself? Ask them that. Or you don't have to go through this alone. Let's find someone who can help. Now, if they admit to suicidal thoughts, stay with them, remove access to harmful items, and get professional help immediately is what the recommendations are there. That was kind of hard for me to say and talk about, but I'm glad I have put those things out there. Yeah.
My heart's like absolutely thumping right now. So
why?
Just because it's heavy, because it's, it's I want to say unnecessary. It's that feeling of hopelessness when you feel like you've got nowhere else you can go, and you actually plan and act upon something like that. It's such a terrible thing, and it's become so prevalent. And the stats that you were giving earlier about the age group and the demographic of the people at risk are the people that I know who've taken their own life, and in that age group.
So what do you mean? What stats? Which ones?
Well, in terms of what the young men between 25 and 35,
which is the predominant demographic that listens to this podcast.
Yes. Yeah. So you're hitting the target market for people who are feeling that sense of helplessness and hopelessness.
Yeah.
And that just brings me, like, I just know that there are people out there feeling that way, and it breaks my heart. And you can't reach them all, but you can reach the ones you know.
Yeah.
And then, if one person who's listening to this gets upskilled in a way that they can go and approach a friend who might feel that way, this is worth sitting and doing.
Yeah. I just want to tap into the advice I've been given through this course, and also, again, like I keep referencing the Talk to Me Bro guys, because, they've really delved deep into how to help people with this. Mm-hmm. And, I wonder how many lives have those guys saved?
Yeah.
Because they're giving people the tools, and they would go much deeper into it. And so I will definitely put a link to the Talk to Me Bro website, which has like a really good detailed range, like really builds on what I just said. But fundamentally, again, being direct is very key with the suicide stuff. Sometimes people, it's very uncomfortable for people to raise. It's a heavy thing and they don't want to ask someone directly like that. But the recommendation is that you ask directly, are you thinking about hurting yourself?
Yeah.
And if they are, and if they say they are, okay, or you suspect they are, like just immediately get professional help. I think Lifeline would be the first call I would personally make. I don't know what you would do, Sean, and tell them my friend has said that they want to hurt themselves, or I suspect that they're going to hurt themselves. What do I do from here? And you might save a life, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that those questions of do you have a plan? Have you gathered a way of doing this? Is that available to you right now? All of those things, especially if you're not there. But if you're there, as you say, you stay there.
Stay there.
And you work through that until there's somebody there that's more capable of helping or more experienced in helping than you are. But yeah, it's a horrible and heavy thing.
Yeah, well, it is a horrible and heavy thing, but it's happening all the time.
Yeah.
And I don't want to rattle off the stats. Because I did look up statistics around it. I'm sick of giving it energy. Look, it's a lot. It's high, and most people have been affected by it either directly or maybe one or two people removed. But we've all experienced it in some way. So let's not dance around it anymore. Let's just stop it by talking about it and asking people, how they're going, literally talking to people. And I mean, that's the motivation today, is just to, change the stigma, which is definitely changing, and build a culture of communication. And I don't want to say just in men, because it's almost cliche to go, oh, men don't know how to communicate. I reckon we do. We just need to work on it a bit more. We just don't do it as good as other people.
And you're right. It's definitely changing. My language has developed. My feeling of openness has developed over the years from being around younger people who are doing it. I see them doing it. My son's cohort of friends, they're in their mid-20s now. So great to see young men, young boys, they're just boys, they're in their, somewhere between 10 and 15 at our school, have just changed the way they can relate to each other, and are so much more open than they were 20 years ago. And that's, you're talking about some postcodes that are pretty hard work, where you wouldn't expect it. You wouldn't expect these kids to be so sensitive and so open as young boys.
Interesting.
So and that's improved. So I find that really heartening. Same. Whether that's through education or whether it's through a generation of their fathers and mothers who were a little bit more open.
Yeah.
But it's definitely changing.
It is changing culturally, systemically.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother conversation. I think there'd be people out there who agree with that, but let's not go there. We are here for positive things. We want to give you the tools and how to start conversations. And I just want to add one more thing just in regards to questions. I said, ask direct questions. And again, some more direct questions that you could ask would be, have you been having thoughts about hurting yourself? Are you feeling hopeless about the future? These are more subtle ones. And do you feel safe right now? And do you have a plan to harm yourself? So ask them those questions, and if they're in a really unhinged state, get help, stay with them, remove anything of danger, don't let them out of your sight.
Yeah.
Because, again, the Talk to Me Bro ethos is that it's a rough patch, not a rough life. And when you came over to my house tonight, Sean, you were talking about some dark times that you've probably experienced without going into details, and you got through them and you had people there to support you. But then the lesson that you learned from it all when other dark patches came in your life is that they do pass.
They do.
Every single time. And I've learned that's one of my biggest lessons when I've been in like the dark night of the soul. Have you heard of that?
I've heard of the phrase, yeah.
Yeah. The dark night of the soul where you feel like there's no end to that tunnel. There is.
Yep.
And it does. And then it's beautiful and I don't know. It's special. I've had guests on here like, I was thinking of James McMillan. He was in the dark night of the soul, really at the end. And he got through it and he said, his words were like, colours never looked so bright and smells never smelt so good. And he's a surfer and waves never felt so good. And, anyway.
And if you don't, anyway, you know what, you're saying what I was thinking is that it feels like it's never going to end, but it always does. It's a ride. It goes up, it comes down. That's life. It's hard. Yeah. There are challenges, but there are always people around you. Yeah. I'd love to think that was true for everyone. I really would love to think that was true for everyone. It's not always true, but generally there are people around who can support you.
Like, can I ask you, like this experience that we're having as humans is turbulent. It's always going to be, no matter if you're rich, poor, everyone's got their issues of some type, whether you're in the top end of the high society or low SES, you're going to have issues. Like over the years, what have you found works for you in life for managing highs and lows? Yeah, I mean, don't just say skateboarding.
No, it's definitely it's all of those things. I'm going to say this because I'm going to misquote for sure, but I was talking to my son this morning on the way to work about this, and he said he heard this thing recently where somebody, a psychologist I think, was saying to a person, if you had to, like, if you sneeze on someone, that's a really good way to give them a cold. Yeah. Like, right? Cough in their face. That's how you give someone a cold. If you wanted to say to someone, hey, I want you to give yourself depression, what would you do? And they go, well, I would probably isolate. I might eat badly, like abuse substances, not have healthy relationships, quit my job. All of those things. That's how you give yourself depression. Like it's not the root. It's not always what happens. It's a very complicated chemical thing. But if you want to not have depression, you have to not do some of those things. So I do the opposite of that. I try and I maintain healthy, regular relationships in all sorts of different, like colleagues, friends, family, partners, kids I work with. That's really, really important for me, is to have, and it can be the most insignificant kind of context, like friends that I see, like people I know who work in shops that I go to regularly, chatting with those people. I personally need to do some kind of exercise really regularly. Yeah. Like I've found that out when I was a really young kid. I haven't got ADHD or anything, but I can't sit still. And if I don't do exercise, I feel myself being just falling down in a heap, mood-wise. Yeah. I feel better. It's probably not the worst thing in the world, but I feel much better when I eat good food and drink, basically just water. I feel much better in myself when I'm like that. They're the main things for me. And sleep. I feel definitely better if I'm getting a decent amount of sleep.
These are really practical.
Well, they're really achievable. I do, I love to eat a hamburger, but if you eat bad food all the time, you're not getting the nutrition that your brain needs, and if you're not sleeping, same thing. If you don't get regular exercise, if you're up all night watching, I don't game or anything like that. I don't really do social media, but if I'm up really late watching a movie or sport on TV, I feel terrible in the morning. I know. And I'm just doing the tiniest little bit of someone who might spend 24 hours watching a game.
Well, it's blue light stimulation.
Yeah. And your brain, it takes hours and hours and hours for your brain to shut down after that, let alone, like if you, I watch TV maybe up until 9:30 or 10. That's not good. That's not okay.
It's not natural. I'm sorry, it's primally...
Yeah. It's not what
too smart for
No,
him.
that's it.
we weren't born to be looking at a bright screen.
No.
Like, really, the last light of the day we're meant to see is that of the sun setting.
That's it.
And that triggers the sleep hormones. Apparently, I could search it up, but just trust me. Or the light of a flickering campfire. You know.
Yep.
And then, but we don't. We stay up way later.
Yep.
We're not getting up with the sun and we're not going to bed with the sun.
Mm-hmm.
That could be something too.
It definitely is. And you've got the circadian rhythm. And I've had serious bouts of depression, and I've been on medication for it. And then, I'm like, I've got a great GP, and he said to me this is going back 15, probably nearly 20 years ago. So you've only got one eye. Like, you're getting half the amount of light into your brain.
Oh, I didn't even consider that.
Well, I didn't either. Of course, physiologically. Like I've never really deeply looked into it, but he gave me a couple of really straightforward things to do, like don't wear sunglasses in the morning. Yeah, stuff like that. And it definitely changed how I feel. Like when I figured that out, and I don't take medication anymore, and I do those really simple things. I get as much sunlight into myself as I can. Natural light's obviously, as you say, it's what we're designed to do. And I love that. I love how you threw in the campfire there, because that was our original. That's humanity's original kind of pub, if you like, is that we used to sit around and tell stories around the campfire, and that was our community. And everyone who's done it as an adult or even as a child and felt that feeling knows that it's one of the most special things you can do. And why are we so connected to it? Because it's part of our evolutionary makeup as a species. That's what we grew up as a species doing that. We'll evolve out of it. Yep. That's just what'll happen. But we're not evolved out of it yet. So you feel it a sense. Well, I do personally feel a sense of calm and true connection when I'm sitting around a campfire with people.
Oh, it's amazing, dude. Yep. It really is. Listen, sorry, I just want to, because I got really curious. I forget you have one eye. Okay, sorry.
Thank you for that.
Because
you've been looking at me for the last
hour. Skateboarding with you, you skate rad, you function normally, but I don't know what it's like to be you, and when you just said that your doctor said that you're getting half the amount of sunlight, that's really interesting, because sunlight is so important to immune function, and I've looked a lot into it, but the one about wearing glasses is interesting. I just looked it up. So obviously, I'm not saying don't wear glasses. This is what the research is showing. I just found some. It says when you wear sunglasses, your eyes receive less sunlight, which can trick your brain into thinking it's darker outside. So this causes your pupils to dilate slightly, allowing more light into your eyes and reduce squinting, which normally helps limit UV exposure to your skin. So what it does is that you get a lower melanin production signal. So sunlight triggers the body to produce melanin, which is the pigment that helps protect the skin from burning. So if you're wearing sunglasses, it's lowering that production signal. So your body will produce less melanin. Therefore, it technically will burn easier.
How?
By wearing sunglasses, you are increasing your harm of sunburn, your chance of sunburn. How interesting. So it's like us humans, our bodies are so amazingly designed. Yeah. But then, we try to change it. But it also goes on to say, you should keep wearing sunglasses, or just get your sunlight, but limit your exposure is the key. It's saying here, 15 minutes out in direct sunlight, have a break, another 15 minutes.
And that's why I'm sure that's my doctor's advice was don't wear them in the morning, because it's not so bright, not so intense, and you'll get that dose you need.
Yeah, sunglasses slow down melanin production, leaving your skin slightly more vulnerable. There you go. All right, learn a lot today. Hey.
Yeah,
thank you.
That's interesting.
Thanks, Sean. Far out. Do you want to know what I do to look after myself mentally?
Whatever it is. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Thanks for asking.
No.
Grav.
Yeah. You're running this show.
Mate, you're the worst co-host ever.
Hey.
Oh, that's bad for your mental health. Shit.
You just put me down, man.
Sorry.
Hey, Shan.
Yes?
Just while we're, having this conversation, like, I know you've had your demons, but you're a functional guy. You've got great relationships. I don't know anyone who's been in Newcastle for the amount of time you've been here, which is not very long, and know as many people as you do.
Oh, thanks, man.
But what do you do to look after yourself?
Thanks for asking.
Mentally.
Thanks for asking, Sean, from episode whatever you were. No, honestly, I do want to relate it because it's a big one. Firstly, I'll start with when I'm going through a really rough patch, I've definitely worked out what works for me. Okay. It's having a friend that will listen to my broken record, that I can ring up and go, and they'll just talk to me. We'll stay on the phone for hours, and I will probably tell the same story. So if I've got an issue that's really, on my mind, they'll listen to me talk through that issue, and they'll give ideas, and they'll be there with me for it. And I get emotional to think I've got some friends that have just been there for me for hours. And I try to do the same for other friends, but they'll listen to the broken record of me going like, look, let's say it's a breakup. She did this and she left me and then she took the dog and whatever. And okay. And then 10 minutes later, and then she left me and she took the dog and she, wants to take the cat as well, Okay. Things like that. And I'll say it over and over. Hard cardiovascular exercise. Like, it just works for me. Like when I really exert myself, running, for me it was MMA and boxing, it really helped in terms of like afterwards, the feeling I had again, the inner demons would be suppressed and I'd feel great. And also I got healthier, made me want to eat better food because of the heavy exercise. Okay. But as a health teacher, we reference the 5 dimensions of health, and they are social health, emotional health, cognitive health, physical health, and spiritual health. And these are recognized by health professionals, the World Health Organization. So when I feel like I need to reevaluate my mental health, I just go, okay, am I doing a little bit from each box? Okay, what's my social health like? Have I been hanging out with friends? Have I been talking to friends? Have I been picking up the phone? Whatever. Emotional health. Do I have a confidant I can talk about my feelings? Great. Tick. Cognitive health. Am I trying to learn something new? Am I reading a book? Am I Googling some shit up? Am I learning like how to invest money or like whatever, a challenge like go and play Uno with a friend or something while you're jogging. There you go. Tick, tick, tick. And then I guess in more recent years, the spiritual health dimension, and it means that can be anything, but it's just an acknowledgement that you accept that there's another realm out there that's not of this world. That's effectively what spiritual health means. A majority of the world's population has a faith or a spiritual belief of some kind. And for me, in recent years, it has been praying to a higher power of my own understanding and acceptance that there is something else not of this world who is effectively, participating in my life to teach me lessons and guide and direct me. And for some reason, that gives me like a deep peace and contentment I've never felt before. If you want to link it to a religious denomination, go ahead. Do whatever works for you, but that's what's working for me right now. So there you go.
Yeah, and look, I've been through a very straightforward Western religion as a young person. Grew up in a family like that. I made my own choices and decisions as an adult. I really like when you rattled off those 5. I'm like, yeah, right. Yeah,
and you're doing it.
The way you I need to. I know I do. I'm much better when I'm like when you say learning stuff. If I'm not finding out new stuff or thinking about things in different ways, I get really disappointed with myself because what's the point? But it's funny. It's really interesting. Spirituality for me has always been connected with something that I didn't really agree with in terms of the dogma of organised religion. But in the last definitely 10, probably 15 years, I recognise myself as a really spiritual person. And I believe in the connection of this, where we are. Everything's connected in terms of we're just atoms. It's just electrons. It's just So we have we all exist in the same, made of the same energy. We're the same energy as that window, and that for me that gives me this. It's not just a power. It's not just a sense of belonging, but this real curiosity about the bigger questions of how and why and where. And it's at the end of the day, spirituality in whatever form is just a curiosity. It's a questioning and a sense for, this is my perception of it, a sense of trying to make sense of what and who we are. It's like you can think of it in terms of answers, because if you go looking for a spiritual guide, there'll be an infinite number of people who will give you answers, but that's just their shtick or their perception of it or whatever. Yeah, but it's just curiosity.
Humans have been trying to work it out,
right?
Forever.
Yeah,
they've been trying to answer this one question forever: what happens when you die? Do you know the answer? Look, should I Google it? You know what I mean? So I think in my older years, I don't feel old. I feel great, but I think it's like, why not now? No one really knows. So why not believe in something?
Something, yeah.
Because for many years I didn't, and I criticised and ridiculed.
Yeah.
And I get very edgy about talking about this, because I know it can polarize audiences like that, and I'm not here to polarize, because I want to make sure that people can still come here in a safe space and hear open-minded, thoughtful contests of ideas.
Yeah.
That's what I see the podcast as. It's a contest of ideas. I'm just raising this point.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say this, fuck it. I criticized Christianity my whole life because I had a negative experience with it as a kid. My mother, deeply Christian woman, ridiculed her, didn't want to know her, talked to her. But then now, after watching her do it for 40 plus years, I see a woman that has overcome extreme adversity and has evolved into this beautiful, kind, lack of bitterness human. And I just go, I don't know how she did that. And it must be that faith that she had. And so I criticize the Bible most of my life. I still do in a lot of ways. And then I thought, I've never actually read it, and it's the most sold book in the world. So I've just given myself a challenge to read the thing from start to finish. And January 1st, I've actually read it, a piece of it every day. So at the end of it, I can then maybe speak with some kind of authority and not sound like a complete hypocrite or fool. Am I publicly announcing or identifying as a Christian? I don't know, but I'm on a journey. But I do know that when I pray, there's a deep contentment and inner peace that I've never felt through any other pursuit, like through sex, drugs, rock and roll. That time I frontside tasked the vert wall at Ulladulla during the Vans Warped Tour comp, that was a good moment. But it didn't feel as good as the peace I feel when I pray. So to a God of my own understanding, I'm going to stick with that for now.
Yeah.
So,
and look, if 15 or 20, definitely 20 years ago, you and I having this conversation, I would have...
You would have walked out.
I wouldn't have walked out, because I'm not, you're a mate, and I've got other mates who have all sorts of different faiths, but I wouldn't have understood what you mean. couldn't have conceived of what that meant, but when I think about the way I think about spirituality, it's the same way everyone, how can I say that? It's what I perceive that other people get out of their faith and spirituality, and we all get something out of it. And whatever way you do it, if you're not, as long as you're not harming or impinging someone else's freedom to express theirs, go ahead and have that faith. Go ahead and have those beliefs, because we're just here trying to make sense out of this thing. And mine's as dumb and mindless or as brilliant and worthwhile as anyone's.
Yeah.
But the fact that I have it has created this unconditional positive regard for anyone who has faith, because if you need to believe in something, if you want to believe, you don't need to, but if you do need to, that's great. If you want to believe in something, if you feel like that's adding meaning, like you're actually saying, and it's like a lot of people do it without thinking what they get out of it. They just do it because that's what they've always done. Fine, that's also fine. But if you stopped and thought about, I actually get a beneficial response from my own faith, whether it helps you through a particular situation or it just gives you that overwhelming feeling of calm, like you're talking about, how can that be a bad thing?
Exactly. I love that you said that. And I think, do you feel like you've softened in your age?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not. Yes. Short answer is yes. The long answer is probably not. I'm so passionate. Like I do it in a much more effective way. I'm passionate and I'm angry. I get so angry at certain things, the way things get done. But I always try and look at it through that filter of that's just that person doing the thing for whatever reason, whether it's money or greed or power or revenge or whatever it is. People do really, really atrocious things.
They do.
And so I try and stay away from anything to do with that. Yeah. I don't engage in the news because I just don't believe it. I don't trust it. I don't believe in it. It's not real. Like it's just so manufactured and manipulative that I just can't go there. What I see with mine, I said this to you when I was sitting in this chair, whenever it was last year. What I don't see with my own eyes, I just can't believe or trust. Because that's just how it is. And, but...
I mean, that's interesting because when you say what I can't see or feel with my own eyes, I mean, that's kind of the opposite to faith, because faith is trusting in what you can't see, but what you feel.
That's a good pickup. I'm just talking about things that I like, things that I'm told and hear.
Through the media?
Yeah, I just don't like...
that shit.
And it's like it's so far away from... impinging on me. Like if I hear that there's a guy in Beaumont Street with a submachine gun, I'm not going to go down there. Like I'm not that stupid. Just because I can't see that there's someone down there or hear that the gun's going off, I'm just going to go, okay, I'm going to steer clear of that. But on the main, it's just about my experiences, what I'm dealing with. Otherwise, it just becomes you just end up, which is what the media's aim is. It's just about fear and control. And I don't want to be part of that.
No, and you can. And that's actually a good point. That you can consume the media that you choose the media you consume.
Yeah.
And in this day and age, there's a lot of really good independent media that's emerging. I love that, and that's a byproduct of the internet that no one's seen coming. And then the governments and everyone's running scared, and maybe it's created confusion as well. But you can choose your sources, man. Yeah. But going back to the whole faith thing, I think for me, and I think I've finally been surrendered and beat down enough by this world that I've actually finally been open to exploring other avenues. And I think people's lack of willingness to change their position out of ego is so detrimental. And then they wake up one day and they're 80 years old and they're bitter, they're lonely.
Yeah.
So I think a willingness, and I think that's sort of where I am. And it's just like I've always been driven by a desire to learn and progress. And, I'm just on a journey with it. That's all. That's all I'm at. And I think, I look at you, I see I've always, from the moment I met you, I was like kind, peaceful soul, and I've never heard a bad word spoken about you. I'm not saying you're perfect. No one is. But I'm just saying like you must be doing something right with your soul.
Yeah, well, I like
you got your values in the right place.
You're that person too. You're that person. You're 100% that person.
Thanks,
Same thing. Everyone loves you. And you're...
I know someone that doesn't trust
me. Well, you're a decade younger than me, You're more than a decade younger than me. So it
doesn't feel like it.
Well, but you know what? I've been around a long time and I try just... Even as a even as I wasn't having an angry punk, but even as a punk who looked scary and nasty, and probably did things that I wouldn't do now as an adult. It was all you just don't do any harm.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't hurt people. Don't impinge on other people's freedoms.
I love that. That's a beautiful philosophy.
Well, imagine if everyone did it.
But I'm just saying, dude, like, I think humans have this amazing way of just twisting things and change. I think that's just the biggest problem. Like, the media is the best example of that. Like, you don't trust the media because it's just like human nature to control, twist the truth, change things, push an agenda, push bias. Again, reading the Bible, man, like, which I criticize and heard other people criticize, like, all I've really read is messages of, like, love people, turn the other cheek, don't commit adultery, don't cheat. What's another one I've been learning about recently? Serve others. These are the messages that I've picked up on. I haven't heard any messages that say, so far anyway, if you're out there, don't start sending me like Bible quotes that are saying that you should go and commit hate crimes towards a certain group in our society. I don't want to hear. Let me work this out for myself. But so far, that's all I'm reading.
Yeah.
And I mean, that can't be bad. Serving others, not committing adultery, turning the other cheek, don't harm others. So this is literally all I've read so far.
Yeah.
So I know it can't be a bad thing. But maybe it's a human interpretation that is the real devil.
And that, it's greed. It's power. It's power and greed that's turned all of that good stuff into something that that people don't value, and that's a shame. I think on my funny little, really naive, uneducated look at it is, I think everyone's all talking about the same thing, and that's why I feel sad about religion wars and hatred between groups, is that basically everyone's talking about the same thing, and you can call it what you want. You're all talking about the same thing. It's just stop arguing about it and agree that your guy's called this and our guy's called this, and you don't have one at all, and that's okay too. And your way of doing it is sitting on a mountain, and all of those things, all about the same thing. It's just it's a looking for a meaning and finding it in a way that benefits you. And that's what you're talking about, and I love that. And I wouldn't have got that 20 years ago. I wouldn't have understood it.
Yes,
for you to say it is so good, because I would have not agreed. I wouldn't have been able to conceive of the idea. But I went, again, talking about Nick Cave twice in the same podcast, I listened to Nick Cave's interview about the challenges he faced after the death of his son, and he's always been a spiritual guy. He's all sorts of biblical references in his music, but the way he talked about religion and faith and what it did for him, and the goods and the pros and cons of having it, and how it helped him get through, really got me questioning, was I a person of faith?
Yeah,
and I am, and I always have been, and I've believed in things that were intangible my whole life. Like I could read the weather when I was the tiniest little kid. Mum would say, "What's it going to do?" I don't know. I think it's going to rain. It feels like it's going to rain. That's a dumb reference, but that's the person I've always been since I was a tiny little kid. I feel my environment. I feel connected to my environment, and that's
maybe you're feeling God, dude.
And that's exactly what I'm saying. It's you're calling it God. And that's great.
Well, I'm saying a higher power of my own understanding.
Yeah, well, and where is my point is, we're talking about the same thing. I just don't have a name for it, and you're sort of saying the same thing.
But you feel something.
But I feel something.
So do I.
Yeah, I feel a connection.
So do I.
To stuff,
and it feels great.
Yeah, no, I think I acknowledge that we have that spiritual feeling because we have a central nervous system, and this is going really quickly into psychology. We have a central nervous system that's doing stuff that we're not even at the tiniest bit aware of
Yeah.
all the time, every single minute of second of minute of hour of day that we're breathing. Our central nervous system's taken on information that we've got no clue about, which explains a lot about those weird senses and feelings and deja vu and feelings of connection. It's because you are connected.
Yeah.
Because you're made of electricity and so is everything around you. And I describe it to myself that way. And it works for me.
It's pretty amazing. I think a lot of humans, actually going back to the nature thing, a lot of humans think they're separate to nature, but we are nature.
What grows, if you die, you go into, if you're buried in the ground, you become the soil.
You become great compost.
Yeah, if you're
good fodder for cultivating mushrooms.
Yeah, if you, you're the same stuff. It's just science. That's just science. You're a carbon-based life form. You're
a carbon-based, which manifests in the flowering of mushrooms. So let's not go there.
Yeah, well, yeah, we could.
Anyway, wow, man. I mean, I thought this was going to be a short episode on just giving these strategies, but it's evolved into much more. But
look, people listen to your show. I don't know the numbers, but people listen to your show, and you know, a few of those people might have gone, oh, I know a person like that, or I'm that person.
Yeah.
And seek help or give help.
Yeah. What other podcasts do you listen to, if you don't mind sharing?
Oh, look,
give them a plug. I'm just curious.
Like I said, I'm not I don't engage in much media at all, but if I find something, if I see something I like the idea of, like I said, I listened to that 9 Club with Olsen and Salber, and it turned into a circus in the end. It was a funny circus, but it was a circus in the end. And
how healthy does Salber look?
Yeah, and
he looks so healthy.
Well, he's I think exactly my age. He's still got a full head of hair. He's
super tanned.
Talking about guys that look after themselves. He got onto that early. He got the early albums on doing and stretching and good eating and he just skates all the time. And Olsen is such a brilliant guy. He's he's so intelligent. Like I've had conversations with him where we've just done this, just gone off on these crazy tangents. But he's
him on the podcast.
I'll get him on the podcast. You should ask. Jim's got his number.
If you get him on the podcast, then I really will believe in God.
Jim's got his number. You should ask Jim.
Has Jim got his number?
Yeah. Didn't you heard that story?
Damn, that Jim Turvey.
They prank called him one night, and he was like in the studio painting, and he just shot the shit with them for an hour.
Oh my God, Jim would have been funny. Like a little kid.
He was, yeah, and he said he was very funny. But
anyway,
that's so. And I listen to audiobooks occasionally if I find something that I.
Okay, so it's just the 9 Club.
Yeah, and it's not even that. It's like I've listened to maybe less than 10 episodes.
Interesting.
It's only if I see something that I.
Yeah, I'm trying to branch out a bit. I listen to Theo Von a lot. He's a comedian. He's so funny. He cracks me up for some reason. But he's had some banging guests, like really thoughtful guests. He's trying to advocate for really good messages. He had this woman on there recently who was literally on a war against Pornhub.
Yeah, right.
Oh, man, and she just broke down all the information about that and what it leads to in terms of societal problems. Like, it was a deep episode, man.
Yeah.
And so he's really he's out there trying to, do good things for the world. I love that. So, the 9 Club. I love the 9 Club, and I love skateboarding. But for me, I can't just talk about skateboarding all the time. But that's what they do, and good on them. And I know I can go there for that.
Yep.
So thank you, 9 Club. But for me, I just need to vary it up.
I'm the same, and I read different. I go through phases, and I'm currently in a phase where I'm actually taking in lots and lots of new information because I need it. I need it for my job. I'm dealing with different things that I've never dealt with before in ways that I've never had to deal with it before, and so I'm trying to take on new ways of making sense of that for myself.
Right.
And you don't have to go very far with psychology to get a lot of really good, it's like thought-provoking stuff about your own behaviour. Because at the end of the day, I go to work and I'm working with adults and children, and the only person I can control is me.
Yeah.
So I have to have better strategies of being a better version of me.
Man, that's almost a good way to end, Sean.
I think so too.
But listen, before we do end, thank you. Look, I want to say a huge thank you for being part of this as the first real conscious episode of You Good?
You good, mate?
Question mark, You Good? And I plan on doing these where, maybe I think the next guest, I want to get someone who can talk, give us some expert advice on nutrition and diet, maybe some other ones, anyone that I think could be just helpful episodes as opposed to interviews all the time. The interviews will still be happening, but every few weeks or so I'm going to wedge one of these in. And when you've got the opportunity to sit with a legend like Shan, Gravel Burns, Mussett, thank you, sir.
Oh, you're more than welcome. I was so honoured again to be on the show.
Are you going to go to the Bondi Bowl Bash?
I hope so. I'm getting it in my calendar. When I heard about it, which is only really recently, I was so excited for it. I love that bowl. It's
same.
Terrifying, but it's
the vibe at Bondi.
Yeah,
so
it's cool.
Saturday, March 22nd, get to Bondi for the Bondi Bowl Bash in memory of the legendary Sasha Steinhorst. See ya.